The desert wind carried sand that stung like tiny needles against exposed skin. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her medical pack and checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The SEAL team had been moving through the Afghan mountains for 18 hours straight, and exhaustion was beginning to show on every face except hers. "Santos, how much further to the extraction point?" Lieutenant Commander Jake whispered into his radio, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. Maria consulted her GPS device and studied the terrain ahead. 2 clicks northwest, sir. Should reach it in 45 minutes if we maintain current pace. The team consisted of 8 elite operators, but Maria stood out for reasons beyond her gender. While the others carried standard combat gear, she shouldered additional medical supplies that could mean the difference between life and death in these remote mountains. Her calm demeanor and steady hands had already saved 3 lives during this deployment. Petty Officer First Class Danny crawled up beside her position behind a cluster of rocks. "You ever get tired of babysitting us knuckle-draggers, Doc?" Maria smiled slightly, keeping her eyes focused on the valley below. "Someone has to keep you boys from bleeding out over every scraped knee." The mission had started as a routine intelligence gathering operation. Their target was a compound suspected of housing high-value Taliban leaders. The plan was simple: observe, photograph, and extract without engaging unless absolutely necessary. But plans had a way of falling apart in Afghanistan. As they prepared to move from their current position, a sharp crack echoed across the rocky terrain. The distinctive sound of a sniper rifle sent all 8 team members diving for cover. Bullets ricocheted off the rocks around them, sending chips of stone flying in every direction. "Contact, single shooter, 11 o'clock, shouted, pressing himself against a boulder. The team immediately began returning suppressive fire while trying to locate the shooter's position. Maria stayed low, scanning her teammates for any signs of injury. Her medical training had taught her to watch for the subtle signs that often preceded someone calling for help. "I see muzzle flash, ridge line 200 meters, called out Petty Officer Second Class Mike, adjusting his scope. The firefight intensified as more enemy fighters appeared from concealed positions throughout the valley. What had been a single sniper was now a coordinated ambush involving at least a dozen Taliban fighters. The SEAL team found themselves pinned down with limited cover and no clear escape route. "Santos, we need to move," yelled over the gunfire. "Can you see a way out of this?" Maria studied the terrain with the tactical awareness that had made her invaluable to special operations units. Her eyes tracked potential movement routes while calculating distances and exposure times. "There's a dried riverbed 30 meters to our east. We can use it for concealment, but someone needs to provide covering fire." "Lay down suppressive fire. Everyone else follow Santos," commanded. The team began a tactical withdrawal, with Maria leading the way toward the riverbed. Her knowledge of battlefield medicine extended to understanding how to move wounded personnel across difficult terrain, skills that proved invaluable even when everyone was still mobile. As they reached the relative safety of the dried riverbed, an explosion erupted from their previous position. The Taliban fighters had brought up a rocket-propelled grenade, turning their former cover into a shower of rock fragments and dust. "That was too close," muttered Petty Officer Third Class Park, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. Maria immediately moved to examine the wound. "Just a scratch, but let me clean it before it gets infected." Her hands moved efficiently, cleaning and bandaging the cut while keeping one ear tuned to the ongoing firefight above them. The team continued moving through the riverbed, using its natural cover to put distance between themselves and the ambush site. Maria monitored each team member's condition, watching for signs of fatigue, dehydration, or injury that might compromise their ability to reach the extraction point. "How's everyone doing back there?" asked as they paused to check their position. "Has a slight limp, probably twisted his ankle during that dive for cover. Breathing is a bit labored, might have bruised some ribs. Everyone else looks good," Maria reported after a quick visual assessment. Her ability to provide detailed medical evaluations while under fire had earned the respect of every operator she'd worked with. Unlike many medics who only responded when called upon, Maria proactively monitored her team's health status throughout every mission. The riverbed eventually led them to a series of caves that provided better concealment from enemy observation. decided to establish a temporary position while they waited for their scheduled extraction window. The helicopter wouldn't arrive for another 6 hours, and they needed to ensure everyone was in fighting condition. "Santos, check everyone over while we have time," ordered. "I want to know about every bump, bruise, and scratch before we move again." Maria unpacked her medical kit and began systematic examinations of each team member. Her thoroughness was legendary among special operations units. She checked pulse rates, examined pupils for signs of concussion, and palpated potentially injured areas with the skill of an emergency room physician. "That ankle is more than twisted. You've got some ligament damage. I can tape it, but you need to stay off it as much as possible," she advised while applying a compression bandage. "Those ribs are definitely bruised. I'm going to give you something for the pain, but you need to tell me immediately if breathing becomes difficult." Her medical pack contained supplies that went far beyond basic field dressings. Maria had trained extensively with emergency physicians and trauma surgeons, learning advanced techniques that most military medics never encountered. This additional training had been her own initiative, driven by a desire to provide the best possible care for her teammates. As the hours passed, the team took turns on watch while others rested. Maria used the time to inventory her medical supplies and prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. The extraction point was still 2 kilometers away, and they would have to cross open terrain to reach it. "What's your assessment, Doc?" asked quietly as he settled beside her position. "Everyone's functional, but is going to have trouble with sustained movement. His ribs will limit his mobility if we encounter another firefight. The rest of the team is in good shape, just tired." Maria's report was delivered in the same calm, professional tone she always used when discussing medical matters. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of rotor blades in the distance. Everyone immediately checked their watches and realized the extraction helicopter was arriving early. This could be either a blessing or a complication, depending on whether enemy forces had detected their current position. "Contact the bird, tell them we're not at the primary extraction site yet," instructed his radio operator. The response crackled through their communication system. "Negative, you need to reach the extraction point within 30 minutes. Enemy forces are mobilizing in your area." Maria quickly calculated the time and distance involved. "Sir, can't make that distance in 30 minutes, not with that ankle. We need an alternative plan." The team found themselves facing a decision that highlighted the importance of having a skilled medic as part of their unit. Maria's assessment of his injury wasn't just about his current condition, but about his ability to perform under the stress of a forced march across hostile territory. "Can you do anything to get him mobile?" asked. Maria was already reaching for her medical supplies. "I can inject a local anesthetic that will numb the pain, but it won't fix the underlying injury. He'll be able to move, but there's a risk of causing permanent damage." The sound of enemy vehicles in the distance made the decision for them. They had to move, regardless of the medical risks involved. Maria prepared the injection while explaining the potential consequences too, who insisted that temporary mobility was worth the risk of long-term complications. As she administered the anesthetic, Maria's training and experience converged into a moment that would define not just this mission, but her entire career. The injection was just the beginning of a medical emergency that would test every skill she possessed and reveal capabilities that even she hadn't fully understood. The team prepared to move toward the extraction point, unaware that the most challenging part of their mission was still ahead. Maria shouldered her medical pack and checked her weapon one final time, her mind already calculating the medical supplies she would need for whatever awaited them in the darkness beyond the cave entrance. The local anesthetic worked better than Maria had hoped, was able to keep pace with the team as they moved through the rocky terrain toward the extraction point. The helicopter's engines grew louder as they approached the designated landing zone, but something felt wrong to Maria. Her medical intuition, honed by years of emergency situations, was sending warning signals she couldn't ignore. "How's that ankle feeling?" she asked as they paused behind a ridge overlooking the extraction site. "Like I'm walking on a cloud, Doc. Whatever you gave me is working great," replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Maria studied his face more carefully. His pupils were slightly dilated, and she noticed a thin sheen of perspiration despite the cool mountain air. The anesthetic should have only affected the injured ankle, but something else was happening. Lieutenant Commander surveyed the extraction site through his night vision scope. Looks clear. The bird should be here in 5 minutes. Everyone check your gear and prepare for immediate extraction. As the team conducted final equipment checks, Maria kept a close watch on. Her medical training had taught her to trust her instincts when something seemed off about a patient's condition. The symptoms she was observing suggested a possible allergic reaction to the anesthetic, something that should have been impossible given his medical history. The thunderous sound of the approaching helicopter filled the valley as the aircraft descended toward the landing zone. Rotor wash kicked up clouds of dust and debris, forcing the team to shield their eyes and secure any loose equipment. "Move, move, move," shouted over the engine noise. The team began their sprint across the open ground toward the helicopter. Maria ran alongside, monitoring his breathing and movement patterns. What she saw made her blood run cold. His breathing was becoming increasingly labored, and his skin had developed a grayish pallor that was visible even in the dim light. They were 50 meters from the helicopter when suddenly stumbled and fell to his knees. Maria was beside him immediately, her medical bag already open as she assessed his condition. His breathing was shallow and rapid, his pulse was racing, and his skin felt clammy to the touch. "Anaphylactic shock," she diagnosed immediately. "He's having a severe allergic reaction." The rest of the team had reached the helicopter and was gesturing frantically for Maria and to hurry. The pilot was shouting something about enemy contacts approaching from the east. Time was running out, and Maria faced a critical decision that would test every aspect of her medical training. His airway was beginning to constrict, making breathing increasingly difficult. Without immediate intervention, he would lose consciousness within minutes and could die shortly thereafter. Maria's hands moved automatically to her medical supplies, searching for the epinephrine auto-injector that could save his life. "Doc, we have to go now," yelled from the helicopter door. "Enemy vehicles are less than 2 clicks out." Maria found the epinephrine and prepared to inject it into his thigh. But as she removed the safety cap, she noticed something that made her freeze. The auto-injector was damaged, probably from their earlier firefight. The medication chamber was cracked, and most of the epinephrine had leaked out. Her mind raced through alternative treatments as breathing became increasingly desperate. Standard protocol would be to call for medical evacuation, but they were already at the evacuation site with enemy forces closing in. There was no time for a second helicopter, and no other medical personnel available. Maria made a decision that went far beyond her official training. Reaching into a specialized compartment of her medical bag, she retrieved a small vial and syringe that weren't part of standard field medic supplies. The vial contained raw epinephrine that she had obtained through unofficial channels, along with the knowledge of how to calculate and administer precise dosages in emergency situations. "What are you doing, Santos?" demanded as he ran back from the helicopter to check on their delay. "Saving his life," Maria replied calmly as she calculated the correct dosage based on his weight and the severity of his reaction. "He's in anaphylactic shock. This injection should counteract the allergic reaction." The syringe in her hands represented years of additional medical training that she had never officially reported. During off-duty hours, Maria had worked in civilian emergency rooms, studying advanced emergency medicine techniques under experienced physicians. She had also completed unofficial courses in wilderness medicine and tactical emergency care that went far beyond military requirements. "How do you know how to do that?" asked, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. Maria didn't answer as she administered the injection with the precision of a trained emergency physician. Her knowledge of pharmacology and emergency medicine had been acquired through personal study and practical experience that she had always considered a private hobby rather than a professional qualification. His breathing began to improve almost immediately. The gray pallor faded from his skin, and his pulse rate started to normalize. Maria continued monitoring his vital signs while mentally calculating the duration of the medication's effectiveness and planning for potential complications. "We need to move him now while the medication is working," she instructed. "Support him on both sides. Radio the helicopter and tell them we need immediate medical evacuation as soon as we're airborne." The team lifted and carried him toward the waiting helicopter as enemy muzzle flashes appeared on the eastern ridge. The pilot was already pulling pitch as they reached the aircraft, eager to escape the incoming threat. As they lifted off from the landing zone, Maria continued her medical assessment of. Her emergency treatment had stabilized his condition, but anaphylactic shock could recur without warning. She needed to monitor him continuously and be prepared for additional interventions. "Santos, where did you learn to do that?" asked once they were safely airborne. Maria hesitated before answering. Her additional medical training represented a significant investment of personal time and resources that she had never mentioned in any official capacity. She had studied emergency medicine as a personal interest, never expecting it to become relevant to her military duties. "I've done some additional studying in my spare time," she replied carefully. "Emergency medicine, wilderness survival, that sort of thing." The truth was far more complex. Maria had essentially completed an unofficial residency in emergency medicine, working alongside experienced physicians and learning techniques that went far beyond anything taught in military medical courses. Her knowledge base included advanced pharmacology, emergency surgery techniques, and trauma management skills that most doctors wouldn't learn until their second year of residency. His condition remained stable during the flight, but Maria knew that his recovery was just beginning. The allergic reaction could resurface once the epinephrine wore off, and his ankle injury still required proper medical attention. She monitored his vital signs continuously, making notes that would be crucial for the medical team waiting at their destination. "Doc, I owe you my life," said weakly as he began to feel better. "Just doing my job," Maria replied, but she knew that wasn't entirely true. What she had done went far beyond the job description of a military medic. Her actions had drawn on knowledge and skills that she had acquired through years of personal study and unofficial training. The helicopter approached the forward operating base where a full medical team was waiting to receive. Maria prepared to transfer care to the base physicians, organizing her notes and preparing a detailed briefing on the treatments she had administered. As they landed, Maria realized that her actions during the mission had revealed capabilities that she had kept hidden throughout her military career. The calm precision with which she had handled the medical emergency suggested training and experience far beyond what anyone expected from a field medic. The base medical officer, doctor, met them at the helicopter landing pad. "What's the patient's status?" she asked as they transferred to a waiting stretcher. 28-year-old male, anaphylactic reaction to lidocaine anesthetic. Administered 0.3 milligrams epinephrine approximately 20 minutes ago. Vital signs have stabilized, but patient requires continued monitoring for potential rebound reactions, Maria reported with the precision of an experienced emergency physician. Doctor looked at Maria with surprise. The medical briefing she had just received was more thorough and professional than what she typically heard from emergency room residents. "Are you sure you're just a field medic, Sergeant Santos?" The question hung in the air as Maria realized that her emergency actions had exposed a secret she had carefully maintained throughout her military career. Her extensive medical knowledge and advanced treatment capabilities were about to become the subject of intense scrutiny from both her teammates and the medical establishment. Was wheeled into the base medical facility, his condition stable but requiring continued observation. Maria gathered her medical supplies and prepared to face questions that would force her to reveal the full extent of her medical training and capabilities. The mission was over, but Maria's real challenge was just beginning. Her teammates had witnessed medical skills that went far beyond anything they expected from a field medic, and their questions would soon lead to revelations that would change everything about how the military viewed her qualifications and potential. Doctor's question echoed through the medical bay as Maria Santos stood silently beside stretcher. The entire SEAL team had gathered around, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity, respect, and confusion. Maria had saved their teammate's life, but her methods and knowledge suggested capabilities far beyond those of a typical military medic. "Sergeant Santos, I need to ask you some questions about your medical background," Doctor continued, her voice professional but insistent. "The treatment you administered and the way you handled that emergency suggest training that isn't documented in your military medical file." Maria felt the weight of 8 pairs of eyes studying her every reaction. Lieutenant Commander stepped closer, his expression serious but not accusatory. Santos, whatever you need to tell us, now would be a good time. Taking a deep breath, Maria made a decision that would change the trajectory of her entire military career. I have a medical degree from Johns University. I completed my residency in emergency medicine at Baltimore Shock Trauma Center before enlisting in the Navy. The silence that followed was deafening. Doctors' eyes widened in disbelief, while the SEAL team members exchanged glances of complete bewilderment. Who was now feeling much better thanks to Maria's treatment, sat up on his stretcher with his mouth hanging open. "You're a doctor?" asked incredulously. "A real doctor, and you've been running around the mountains of Afghanistan as a field medic. Why didn't you enter the military as a physician?" Doctor demanded. "Your qualifications would have made you eligible for officer training and assignment to a major medical facility." Maria had known this moment would come eventually. She had always been too good at her job, too knowledgeable, too capable of handling situations that should have been beyond her training. Her secret had been safe as long as she remained just competent enough to excel without drawing attention to her true capabilities. "I didn't want to be stuck in a hospital," Maria explained quietly. "I wanted to be where the action was, where I could make a real difference. Special operations teams needed medical support, and I knew I could provide better care than most field medics." Ran his hand through his hair, trying to process this revelation. "Let me get this straight. You deliberately enlisted as a medic instead of commissioning as a doctor so you could serve with combat units." "That's correct, sir. I knew that my medical background would be more valuable in the field than in a rear area hospital. Special operations teams face unique medical challenges that require advanced knowledge and quick decision-making." Doctor was reviewing Maria's medical file on her tablet, her expression growing more amazed with each detail she discovered. "Your performance evaluations are outstanding, but they don't even begin to reflect your actual qualifications. Do you realize what kind of career opportunities you've been passing up?" The truth was that Maria had always known exactly what she was sacrificing. As a military physician, she would have had rank, prestige, and comfortable assignments. But she would also have been removed from the front lines where her skills could save lives in the most challenging circumstances. "I've saved 17 lives during my 3 deployments," Maria stated matter-of-factly. "Most of those saves required medical knowledge and techniques that a standard field medic wouldn't have possessed. I'm exactly where I need to be." Swung his legs over the side of the stretcher, his ankle still tender but his breathing completely normal. "Doc, you literally brought me back from the dead out there. I don't care what your paperwork says, you're the best medic I've ever worked with." "She's not a medic," Doctor corrected. "She's a fully qualified emergency physician who chose to work as a medic. There's a significant difference." The revelation was spreading through the base faster than Maria had anticipated. Word of the mysterious medic who was actually a doctor had reached the command staff, and she could see officers gathering outside the medical bay, clearly waiting to speak with her. "Santos, you're going to have to explain this to some very senior people," warned. "The fact that you've been operating under false pretenses is going to raise questions about security clearances, background investigations, and military regulations." Maria nodded, knowing that her decision to reveal her true qualifications would have far-reaching consequences. "I understand, sir. I'm prepared to answer any questions and accept whatever consequences may result." Colonel James, the base commander, entered the medical bay with his aide and the intelligence officer. His expression was stern but not angry as he approached Maria. "Sergeant Santos, I understand we need to have a conversation about your qualifications and service record." "Yes, sir," Maria replied, coming to attention. "At ease, Doctor has briefed me on what happened during your mission and the medical treatment you provided. I have to ask, are there any other surprises in your background that we should know about?" Maria considered the question carefully before responding. "I also have advanced training in trauma surgery, toxicology, and wilderness medicine. I've maintained my medical licenses and continuing education throughout my military service." Colonel exchanged a look with his intelligence officer. "How have you maintained continuing education while deployed to combat zones?" "Online courses, medical journals, correspondence with colleagues at Johns and other medical centers. I've also worked in civilian emergency rooms during leave periods to maintain my clinical skills." The intelligence officer stepped forward with his tablet ready. "Dr. Santos, I need to verify your claims about your medical background. Can you provide me with specific details about your education, residency, and licensing? For the next hour, Maria provided detailed information about her medical credentials, while the intelligence team every claim through official databases. Her story checked out completely, revealing a medical background that was even more impressive than she had initially described. Dr. Santos graduated second in her class from Johns Medical School, the intelligence officer reported to Colonel. She completed her emergency medicine residency with honors and was offered fellowships at 3 major trauma centers before enlisting in the Navy. Doctor shook her head in amazement. You gave up fellowship opportunities to become a military medic. Those fellowships would have led to department chief positions at major hospitals. I made the choice that felt right to me, Maria replied simply. I wanted to serve my country and use my skills where they would have the greatest impact. Colonel was studying Maria with the expression of a commander who had just discovered a valuable asset in an unexpected place. Dr. Santos, your decision to conceal your qualifications may have been irregular, but your service record speaks for itself. 17 lives saved, multiple commendations, and now this emergency treatment under combat conditions. And his team had been listening to the conversation with growing respect for their medic. They had always known she was exceptional, but learning about her true qualifications put her performance in an entirely new perspective. Sir, Dr. Santos has been an integral part of our team, interjected. Whatever administrative issues need to be resolved, I want to emphasize that she has consistently exceeded expectations and saved lives that would have been lost with a standard medic. Colonel nodded thoughtfully. I'm not questioning her value or her service, but we need to address the fact that the military has a doctor working as an enlisted medic when she could be contributing at a much higher level. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent call over the base communication system. Medical emergency, helicopter landing pad, multiple casualties incoming, ETA 5 minutes. Doctor immediately began preparing for the incoming casualties, but she turned to Maria with a questioning look. Dr. Santos, are you willing to assist with emergency surgery if needed? We're short-staffed, and your trauma surgery experience could be crucial. Maria looked at Colonel and knowing that her answer would effectively determine her future in the military. Yes, ma'am, I'm ready to help in whatever capacity is needed. As the medical team prepared for the incoming casualties, Maria realized that her secret was finally out. The revelation would lead to changes in her military career that she couldn't yet predict, but she was confident that she had made the right choice in revealing her true qualifications. The helicopters appeared on the horizon, carrying wounded soldiers who would benefit from having both Dr. and Dr. Santos working to save their lives. Maria's journey from hidden doctor to acknowledged physician was just beginning, but she knew that her commitment to serving on the front lines would never change. Who was now fully recovered from his allergic reaction, watched Maria prepare for surgery with newfound respect and understanding. "Hey, Doc," he called out as she scrubbed in beside Doctor. "Yeah," Maria replied, focusing on proper surgical preparation. "Thanks for keeping us safe, no matter what it cost you personally." Maria smiled as she entered the operating room, knowing that her true identity was now known, but her mission remained the same. Saving lives and serving alongside the warriors who depended on her skills, knowledge, and dedication.